Welcome back to UT Trailblazer Talks. Today we have,
Marlon Rubio Smith.
and I'm Sarai Vasquez, and we're really excited to get to know you today.
Thank you.
So, first, tell us all about yourself.
My name is Marlon Rubio Smith. I am a senior RTF major here at UT. My hometown here in the U.S. is Houston, Texas, but I was born and raised in Mexico City. I'm a film major. I got into it in high school, but I've kind of like always loved movies, since I was a kid. I've been creating my own projects ever since I got here to college.
So, can you kind of tell us about your journey into filmmaking?
Yeah, so I started watching movies like, just like anyone else when I was a kid. It wasn't until like a few years ago that I started realizing that like I also had like my Michael Jackson era where I was like obsessed with it, especially his music videos, right?
Yeah.
Like as a kid, I would like, kind of like think of my own reiteration of like Thriller and stuff. It was basically like directing. How would I direct my own like, Thriller music video?
Yeah.
No? In middle school in Mexico, I used to make like vlogs, back when like YouTube, was a thing, and that era. And then I moved to the United States, and in high school I took an AV production class, and where I had to like edit segments for the news show and all of those things. And I realized I really liked putting the segments together. And then I had like the epiphany, of like, okay, I really like editing, these videos, and I also like movies. And I put them together, and then you basically have the job of a film editor. So that's kind of like what I initially wanted to do, right? Just like editing. Then I started to create more things. I started to get more into like the narrative aspect of it. And I was like, well, let me try to like shoot my own projects, tell my own stories, So then I got accepted into UT, the RTF program. My freshman year, I started to see that a bunch of my peers were like way ahead, like they had like their set production companies. They were doing paid work, commercial work, and like their stuff looked really great. So I was like, oh wow, I gotta catch up, right?
Right.
But no, I guess I see it now as like, those people inspired me to like start, creating my own things, to take like the initiative and be like, I'm gonna start doing my own projects. And yeah.
No, yeah, that's like I think a common sentiment here at UT. Pursuing anything, you get here and a bunch of students are like way ahead of you, and you feel like you're falling behind. And it happens to a lot of freshmen. So I'm glad that you continue to pursue it, and it was a source of inspiration for you. As a Latinx filmmaker, it can often be hard to kind of break into the industry. What challenges have you faced pursuing the filmmaking industry?
Yeah, I mean, being part of the Latin American, Hispanic community, you don't get access to like a lot of resources that maybe some other people do, at earlier stages of their life. So part of it was like the main challenge, I would say, which is like a mental, like challenge, It's a lot of, sometimes you see all of these things, and it can either inspire you to like, okay, I'm gonna do my own thing, or it can be extremely discouraging, because it can be like, oh well, I don't have those resources. There's no way that I'll be able to make something like that, right?
Right.
I was fortunate enough that my parents had like, they owned like a little mirrorless camera. It's not the best at all, but I mean it is a camera. No? Initial saying is like the best camera is the one that you have access to. No,
right.
Once you're in college, like there's this like, I guess, this sentiment that I kind of like want to have, that like we're kind of like all on the same level. We all got into the same program, so there is something about each of the students that made them get here, to this point. So I seeing it as like we're all in the same stage in our like careers and stuff was kind of like kind of helped with a lot of imposter syndrome, I guess.
Yeah. So tell me about the creation of MXR Films and how you realized that directing and producing was for you.
Yeah, so initially, again, kind of like going off of like these other peers that had like their own stuff already set, and they look very professional. I was like, I want to have something like that, right?
Right.
So funny thing is that my Instagram account that is like MXR Films used to be my so-called Finsta. And initially, I used to watch a lot of like, and I still do, a lot of YouTube videos on like, how to make yourself stand out and doing marketing. Marketing yourself was kind of like one of the main things that I wanted to do, right?
Like building your personal brand.
Yeah, exactly. My intention was not to create like an actual production company. It was just to have kind of like a facade in which I could like, present like my film work.
Mm-hmm.
Not only like my own projects, but just, you know, if I'm on set for someone else, you know, just posting kind of like on my film account. No,
kind of like a portfolio.
precisely.
Right.
Yeah. It wasn't until my first semester of junior year that I did my first like big project called I'm New, and I was like, let me, you know, start like, you know, putting my name there so that people can start associating, you know.
Right.
And that's how I started to kind of like lean into the, I guess, production company side of it. Directing has been always, you know, something that I'm interested in. Producing has kind of like been more of a thing that I just have found myself doing. It's not something I love.
Oh, okay.
It is extremely hard and difficult and stressing. It's a very logistical, very, you know, a lot of scheduling, you know, making calls, emails, you know. So it's something that I'm grateful that I know how to do, because, you know, in case I need to do it for my own, you know, stuff in
it's
the
not
future.
your preferred role in the filmmaking process. Okay,
Exactly. Yeah, I'm mainly focusing on like directing, and recently I've been doing a lot of camera work. So
oh, that's interesting. So could you tell us about how you approach the process of storytelling in your films?
for sure. So I'm a freshman. I'm like, I know I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it, you know. And I remember seeing it and hearing it from like some professors, and it's like, you know, the so-called write what you know, right? And so I did a project for my RTF 318 class, and I did it, and it's kind of like a story about this guy trying to like impress this girl, you know. And I realized, I know the story, but I don't feel it, you know, in my heart. What type of movies do I want to see? What type of stories matter to me, you know? What's something that I think of and I start to like get excited, or I'm passionate about, right? And so, and then if you combine it with the write what you know, that's kind of like the first project I made in my junior year. And I was inspired by my experiences as an immigrant, you know, and as an ESL student.
Right.
Like up until that point, I had seen little to no representation of like this very, you know, niche student subgroup. And up until today, it's kind of like one of my favorite projects, because I've kind of like delved into something personal, something that I find important, and, you know, maybe it has something else to say,
right,
you know, besides just being entertainment or something like that.
It has like a big message, and you get to see it on screen, and it's like your own work, but at the same time, it's something you can relate to.
Yeah, and the shocking part to me was whenever I screen it at the end of the semester, you know, as part of the end of semester classes, a lot of people came to me and they were like, "Wow, I was able to relate to your experience." Because when I was first doing it, I was like, I was a little unsure because it was so specific that I was like, I don't know if people are going to relate, you know, or understand. But I was very surprised to see the number of people who came up to me and was like, I relate to it, or like, you know, I'm a son of immigrants, and like my parents would tell me some of these similar experiences. Being able to see that people related to this, you know, was kind of like, it was a shock, but a pleasant surprise for sure.
And that's the beauty of film. How would you describe your personal filmmaking style?
That's hard to say. I try to focus on portraying my communities, you know, in like a positive light. That includes, you know, immigrants, first generation, you know, students. And so I always try to, you know, see what the stereotypes are in current portrayals in like the film industry. And unfortunately, Hollywood has like terrible, you know, representation. We're starting to see like a rise, but we're still, you know, need to work on
we may see more of ourselves in film, but it's still like embodied by like terrible stereotypes.
Yeah, it's not very accurate portrayals that we see, right? You know, then again, I'm like asking this question, right? Like, okay, I'm not seeing the representation that I would like to see in these movies, then I'm gonna try to make those films, you know?
Yeah.
Where I portray my community the way that I would love to, you know, others to see us. You know? So that's been kind of like a common motif in my films. I love stories of like people trying to fit in, trying to find this sense of belonging. It's a fish out of water, you know, type things.
Like coming of age type of films?
Coming of age, sure, but also just like people that don't belong to like a certain group. You know?
Okay.
And that just, you know, arises from like my experiences as an immigrant, you know.
Right.
I guess those are two of the main like things that I like doing. But yeah, it's hard to say, you know.
Who are some of your biggest influences in the filmmaking industry?
So I still remember very vividly one of the first times I watched the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Mexico, and I was obsessed with Marvel, right?
Right.
And like the only category in which they could compete was the visual effects category, right? And I remember, I think it was either 2014 or something. I think like Iron Man 3 and Gravity by Alfonso Cuarón were in the same category.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Gravity won, and I was so mad. I was like, man, like Marvel lost, like this was like our only chance, right? Right. But then I started to see who Alfonso Cuarón was, and I'm like, oh, he's Mexican born and raised director, and he is in like probably the most like the biggest stage in like this industry right now. He just won an Oscar, the highest recognition that one could say there is, in at least here in America, right? Mm-hmm. I started to look into them, into their movies, and it was just extremely inspiring. Because at that time, I was still in Mexico, but like, it's Cuarón, Iñárritu, Del Toro, all of them started their career in Mexico, and they were able to successfully, cross over into Hollywood to make the films that they wanted at like, big budgets and stuff. And then I kind of like just came to that realization when I was already here, so in the U.S. So I'm like, well, I'm already here. I'm kind of like, a big part of the challenge that they faced, I don't have to face anymore. Right. So, not to say that I'm gonna make it or something, but I sure hope so. Mm-hmm. But yeah, those are of course three of the main inspirations.
Your biggest influences.
For sure, for sure.
Can you share any memorable experiences or challenges that you have faced while working on a project?
Yeah, well, each project comes with its own, types of challenges, right? I guess I'll talk about one of my recent short films called Trompo.
I watched it.
Oh.
I was there for the showing.
Oh, nice.
It's really good.
Thank you. It was like 4 hours before the call time on like the first day of production, right?
Right.
And so, I was a little stressed. I didn't really have a lot of time to rehearse with my actors. I had like one actress coming from like East Texas that day. It was not ideal,
right?
But I was just trying to make the best out of it, right? Mm-hmm. And then I get a call at 2 a.m. Keep in mind my call time is 8 a.m. Mm-hmm. I get a call time from the owner of the house I was gonna shoot at, and he's like, never mind.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah. So I'm like, what do you mean never mind?
Right.
Like,
it's 2 a.m.
It's 2 a.m. I made you sign the location release form, like, I talked to you about, what, you should expect, and, what happened, right? Mm-hmm. So then I just lost my sanity, as
one would.
As one would. Yeah, because, besides, thinking, what's going to happen to my project, and you have your whole crew and cast waiting for you, right? And so anyways, I think I got so discouraged that I was just like, I'm just going to go to sleep and I'll figure it out tomorrow.
Okay.
So I wake up at 8 tomorrow. I start to get some text from my crew. It's like, hey, we're here. And I'm like, oh, I'm talking with my assistant director. I'm like, can you like postpone or like push call time? In the meantime, we can find some solution. Mm-hmm. We ended up postponing it twice. We started at 12:30 or something. Mm-hmm. Once I told my producer, Emma Fisher, like, hey, we lost the house. She was like, what do you mean you lost the house? No? Mm-hmm. So then within an hour, she was able to find another house.
Oh, that's fast. Is that like the role of the producer?
Yes. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean, we were kind of like all producing, right? Yeah. But at this point, I'm just like, emotionally in crumbles, right? Because I'm like,
you're directing it.
Yeah, I'm directing, and I want to focus on that, right? And so I'm not in that mindset of like, okay, let me problem solve. I'm just kind of like,
help.
Yeah, I'm like, help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I tell her, and then she's like, okay, let me see what I can do. Within an hour, she finds a location. So then we get in contact with the assistant director, send call sheets again to the whole crew. See you in like an hour, at this location. So, definitely one of the biggest challenges I've ever faced.
No, that's very stressful. I'm sorry.
Very stressful, but we were able to pull through. And I guess one of the most memorable moments happened in that same set. It was day 3. Right. So last day. It was a very production design heavy set. And so my production designer had to like set dress an entire house, and change it like 3 times. And we're talking about having like at least 30 people on set. And so I was there, so I'm trying to do my work and stuff. I paused for 5 minutes, and it was just one of those beautiful moments, of like, not even, making the film or like making my project or whatever, but it's just like how willing and how kind people can be, to you. Because I was just like looking at everyone, and I had like everyone was kind of like on their A game, trying to get things done, because everyone felt like the urgency and the importance of it. And I was just like, wow, like I have like 30 people like doing a lot of stuff, very intensely, just for my silly little film, and so that's kind of one of the like very rewarding moments that I've experienced throughout my years in college.
And it was really worth it. The film was fantastic, so
thank you
on that.
Thank you.
So what's your perspective on the importance of film festivals and other platforms for independent filmmakers? So
it's like still changing, because I remember junior year, my professor for that one class I'm new for, she like emphasized the importance of film festivals for directors, right? As a director, to pitch yourself, you kind of need that third party validation, that your work has been like recognized and screened somewhere else, besides like school or just kind of your private screenings, right? And so I really took it to heart. I spent a lot of my own money, trying to invest on it because I believed in it, right? But the more I got into it, I kind of like started seeing like the dark side of like film festivals. Not all, but you can pretty much buy like the
Your
recognition. Yeah, because there's like a handful of film festivals. I started getting some emails of like, submit I'm new for $20 for a guaranteed selection. So you just realize like, oh, so basically I'm paying for it, no?
Right.
And so that kind of like took a lot of like the credibility, not of all the film festivals, again, because you have the prestigious, Toronto, TIFF, whatever, Sundance, those are the film festivals that you kind of want to get into,
right?
So that you can get some recognition and possibly get picked up by someone, no? So I don't know. Right now it's just like hopefully raise some money, being able to like submit it to the festivals that I can, get better at like the craft, and just whenever I feel like I'm at that level, just take a leap of faith, and like submit to those high prestige festivals and see what happens.
Thank you for telling us about that.
Yeah,
it's interesting, something to think about. So what quote or mentality do you live by?
Fake it till you make it.
Okay, good one.
If you're scared of doing something, like it's fine, do it. Even if you're scared, no?
Right.
Like don't let the fear dissuade you from doing stuff. Because that's kind of like how I felt like in high school. Like I knew since my junior year that I wanted to do film, but like I used to be like a little scared from like what people would say about it, and like right now it's like I don't care. I'm gonna make whatever I want.
Yeah.
Even if it seems challenging, it's just like, well, I'm gonna learn something, no? And I guess just be grateful of everyone that helps you, because in this industry, it's really hard to do stuff, and if people are able to donate their time, talent, effort, or whatever, that's kind of like honestly, that's kind of like the greatest thing that I get out of doing all of this.
It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
And just to wrap it up, can you share any piece of advice for aspiring filmmakers based on your own experiences?
There's this quote, or there's this like very famous video on TikTok or whatever from Guillermo del Toro talking to some college students in Mexico. He's like, y'all have a shit ton of time, you know, in like your lives. And like when you're in your 20s, you think like, oh, I'm over, you know, I'm like, you know, some old, I'm not gonna make it into anything or whatever. And I mean, yeah, I relate to that, right? Because I'm like, you know, like Spielberg directed Jaws when he was 22, and what am I doing, you know? But it's like everyone has their own timeline, and everything happens for a reason. I think that's, you know, I'm not religious, but like, you know, I think everything, you know, happens for, you know, because you need to learn something before that next thing comes. And whenever that like big project comes or that opportunity comes, it doesn't come to you unless you're ready. So
that's really insightful. Yes,
cool.
Thank you so much for being here.
Of course, thank you for having me.
It. Stay tuned for the next episode of UT Trailblazer Talks, because we're actually having an acquaintance of Marlon here to interview. Can you guess who it is?
Is it Xavier?
No.
I don't know.
No, I swear, you mentioned him.
I mentioned him?
Oh,